Hey, welcome back. So this video is all about dictionary methods. Just like with lists, as we saw in the previous section, there are a bunch of built-in methods we get for free that we can use on any dictionary. Fortunately, there are fewer that we need to know about. There's kind of a lot in the list section, but I still decided to split this up into two videos just to keep it more manageable and shorter. And I should just warn you, there's no logical grouping to which methods made it into this video and which ones made it into the next video, unlike with lists where we saw, 3 ways of adding to a list or 3 ways of deleting from lists. I just decided to split them in half. So let's get started with the first 4. Oh, I forgot about this note. Working with dictionaries is very common. There are quite a few things we can do. Thank you. I'm very glad I added that. So the first one we'll see is clear. And clear is pretty straightforward. It will just empty out a dictionary, leaving you with a hollow shell of what was there before. So we could have a dictionary, we create it using the dict syntax, and we run d.clear, which is what we saved the dictionary into, and it just empties it, and there's nothing left. So over here, I think I have instructor still. If I did instructor.clear, and we look at instructor again, empty. All that hard work gone. Okay, that's that. Next up is copy. So copy will make a copy of a dictionary. So here is that same simple dictionary where we have A equals 1, B is 2, and C is 3. We save it to a variable called D, and if we run d.copy and we save it to another variable, you'll see it makes a copy, a clone that looks exactly the same, it contains the same data, but just like with lists, when we were copying lists, they look the same, and double equals is true, but if we use is, they are unique objects in memory. They're not stored in the same place. So let's do this example here just to show that. So here we have D, and I could do C, I'll just call it clone instead of C, equals D.copy. And if we look at clone and we look at D, they look identical. And if I do clone equals D, that's true. But then if I do clone is D, that's false. If you don't remember when I covered double equals versus is, there is a video all about it pretty early on in the course. I don't remember exactly where. I think it was in the section about strings. Essentially, the difference is this tests for equality of values, and this tests for equality in memory if they're actually references to the exact same place in memory, which these are not. Next up is Fromkeys, which, let me just warn you, it's kind of odd. It works a little bit different than the other methods that we've seen in that we usually call it just on an empty dictionary or on dict, on dict. And why we do that will make sense once we talk about actually creating our own methods and classes and objects. So for now, just take it as fact that we'll call it on an empty dictionary. And we call .fromkeys. What we do is we pass in, let's take a look at this second example first. We pass in an iterable collection. So here's a list with a string email, and then a value. And in this example, the value is unknown, a string. And it will go through this iterable collection and assign each one of these, each item to a key with the value unknown. So we end up with email unknown in a new dictionary. Same thing here. If we just have the string A as the first thing we pass in, and then in a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it will make a new dictionary with A set to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a logical question is, why would I ever want to do this? That seems really like more syntax to generate this compared to just writing this myself. But if we have a bunch of keys that we're trying to set to a default value, for example, let's say I wanted to make a new user variable. So anytime an empty user, or we could have a player object in a game, or a player dictionary in a game or something, and I don't want to go through and set every property to none or to 0 or to whatever we want to set it to. I could use dict, which I can also type dict like this, dot from keys, and I'll pass in a list. Oh, I hit enter too early. Oh man, let me go back. So I'll pass in a list, and let's just do things like name, let's do score, let's do email, and how about profile, bio, or something like that. Okay, and then we can set them all to something like, we could do none initially, but I'll set it to a string just called unknown, and I can hit enter, And if we look at new user now, you'll see that we have name unknown, score unknown, email unknown, profile bio unknown. So it's a way to programmatically create, usually it's used to create default dictionaries to assign values, initial starting values to properties. And just to show you, if I did have an existing dictionary, which, well, I have new user, if I wanted to do new user dot from keys and do the same thing, let's add a single value of phone and then also set that to unknown. And I need to close, totally messed that up. Here we go. Close that there. Okay, if I do this, you'll see that all we get is this new dictionary. New user is unchanged. It doesn't contain phone anywhere. And what was generated was just a new dictionary. So you can use, it works if you try and use it on an existing dictionary. It just does the exact same thing as if you use it on dict or an empty dictionary. Okay, that's all I'll say about from keys for now. It's usually used to generate default values. Actually, that's a complete lie what I just said. There's one more thing that I'll mention. If you don't pass in a list or some of the other iterable collections we'll see, for example, if I do the same thing up here, but instead of phone in a list and I do phone like this, it's going to try and iterate over the string. And a string is an iterable collection, and it will do, or an iterable object. I get P, H, O, N, E. So just worth knowing that if you are trying to do a single value, even though this won't throw an error, it's best to put this in a list. We could do the same thing also. Let me just print this out with range. Let's go from 1 to 10, just like that. And now I get all the keys from 1 up until 9. So strings, lists, ranges, as well as some of the other iterable collections we'll see in the next section are all valid here. Okay, enough of from keys. Next, we have get. Now, out of all of these, I think get is the most useful. What it will do is, if a key is in a dictionary, like in this case, A is, we run d.get A, it will give us the value, which is 1. But if it's not in there, like here, d.get no key, which doesn't exist, it gives us none rather than throwing an error. So this is what I was alluding to in the last video when I said you could use in to test for the existence of a value or for a key, but get is a nice method that is easier, more simple to use. So let me show you a quick demo. Do I still have instructor over here? Oh, I emptied it out. Okay, well, I just pasted it in, and now I have instructor, and I could do something like instructor.get and then pass in a value like name, and it will give me the name Colt. But if I try and do something that doesn't exist like email, it gives me none, which we can actually see here. But if I try and run the same thing and save the results into a variable called results, and I look at result, nothing changes, but I can do result is none, and that is true. And that's it for this video at least. So we saw, if we review here, clear to delete the entire thing, copy to make a clone, from keys, which is commonly used to create default values, and get, which is probably the most commonly used out of all of these. It takes a given key and returns the corresponding value, or if it doesn't exist, it gives you none instead of throwing an error. Okay, next up, just a couple more dictionary methods.